Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be learning all about decimals. Decimal numbers are numbers that appear after a decimal point. And so therefore, the decimal numbers themselves range from 0 to 1. The way we write a decimal number is we start off with a 0 and we add a point, and then we add whatever numbers that follow. So for example, 0.25. And we need to learn two main things when it comes to decimal numbers. We need to know how to turn different values into decimal numbers, as well as turning decimal numbers into different values. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to work through a few S2S examples to learn how we manipulate decimals in different questions. So the first example underneath turn values into decimals says that a computer has loaded 98% of a file. What is the value left to go as a decimal number? So we've been told that a file is 98% loaded. Remember that percent means out of 100. And if you haven't watched our video on percentages, I encourage you to go and have a look at that just to make sure that we understand what percentages are. So because our computer has loaded 98% of the file, it means that 98 out of 100 has been loaded. Therefore, the value left is 100 minus 98, which is 2. We have 2% remaining. Remember, 2% is equivalent to 2 over 100. Therefore, if we want to turn 2 over 100 into a decimal number, all we have to do is we have to divide 2 into 100 places. And when we do that, we should get an answer of 0.02. And we know that this is a correct answer as our value is between 0 and 1. So 2% as a decimal number is 0.02. If we ever want to convert a fraction into a decimal number, what we have to do is we have to divide the numerator by the denominator. Let's move on to the next question. We've been told that Emily got 38 out of 50 in a test, and we need to present this information as a decimal number. So 38 out of 50 as a decimal number, what we need to do is we need to divide 38 by 50. However, in an exam, we perhaps might not have all the time in the world to be doing calculations that aren't as easy for us to do in our head. So a good tip and trick for us to work with fractions and convert them into decimal numbers is for us to look at the denominator. If we want to ever convert a fraction into a decimal number, if the denominator is 100, all we have to do is shift our decimal point back by 2 to get the smaller number of our numerator. So going back to our previous example, 2 over 100 is simply just having our 2 and shifting our decimal point back by 2, 0.02, and we have our answer as so. So the tip is, if we can turn our fraction into a fraction that is over 100, then our answer will be the numerator divided by 100, which is much easier to calculate than a number divided by 50. So what we're going to do is we're going to find our equivalent fraction of 38 over 50 as a fraction over 100. If you haven't watched our equivalent fractions video, I encourage you guys to have a look at that video so that we can understand equivalent fractions. So 38 over 50 as an equivalent fraction of over 100 is equal to 76 over 100. And so therefore, if we want to present this information as a decimal number, all we have to do is take our decimal point from where we find it and move it back to, so that we have divided this value by 100. And so therefore, her test score presented as a decimal number is 0.76. And if we remember our percentages video, then we should know that 0.76 as a percentage is simply 76%. So those are some examples of the types of questions you can get where you need to turn different values into a decimal number. So we've turned a percentage into a decimal number, and we've also turned a fraction into a decimal number. Now we need to know how to turn decimals into different values. And so the first example says that Amy says her test score as a decimal number is 0.8. The test is out of 25. And so what we need to do is we need to calculate Amy's score as a fraction. So there are different ways we can go about answering this question. We can either turn our decimal number into a percentage and calculate the value out of 25. So we calculate the percentage, the number out of 25. That is pretty long-winded, and very often we don't have the liberty of time in a test. The easiest way to calculate her score as a fraction is for us to calculate what 0.8 is equivalent to in a test out of 25. And the way we calculate that very simply is we do 25 multiplied by 0.8. If you are in an exam, another tip and trick, if you're in an exam and you don't have a calculator with you, the easiest way to multiply by a decimal number is to first and foremost remove your decimal number. So we would multiply 25 by 8, which is 200, and then you shift your decimal point back however many places you've eradicated. So we've only got one decimal place here. So with 200, all we would do is we would shift our decimal point back 1. And so therefore, 25 multiplied by 0.8 is 20. And that is our answer for this sum. However, we need to present her score as a fraction. So it means that her fraction for her test score is 20 out of the total amount that we could have, which is 25. Moving on to the second example, it says convert 0.75 to a percentage. Very simply, if we are working from decimals to percentages, all we have to do is multiply by 100. The reason why we do this is because decimal numbers range from 0 to 1, whereas percentages range from 0 to 100. So there is a factor or a multiplier of 100. Our decimal numbers go from 0 to 1, whereas our percentages go from 0 to 100. And so therefore, to convert between one and the other, if we're converting from decimal numbers to a percentage, what we need to do is we need to multiply by 100. And if we're going from percentage to a decimal number, instead of multiplying by 100, what we need to do is we need to divide by 100. So because we're going from a decimal number to a percentage, we're going to multiply our decimal number by 100. So 0.75 multiplied by 100 is the same as shifting our decimal point forward 2 spaces because of our 2 zeros. And so therefore our answer would be 75. Remember that we're calculating a percentage, and so we remember to put our percent sign afterwards. So it would be 75%. Hopefully we have a better understanding of how to work with decimals in terms of turning values into decimals and turning decimals into values. For more resources and services, please do check out www.s2sol.co.uk.